I will pull no punches, and I will swing with no holds barred as I share with you the indisputable truth. Many of you might not like what I have to say, but I'm not going to let that bother me. If you do not want to hear the truth as I see it, you may want to leave now.
How does the police come to anybody's building without serving a search warrant to gain entry? You mean to tell me in this day and age, 21st century, 2017, the police can arbitrarily go to any building and just enter the building?
There's no crime being committed. It's not a crime scene. If it's a crime scene, then you better do what you got to do. Nobody can tell me get off this property. It's not your property.
Good.
It's not a crime scene. If it's a crime scene, I respect what you got to do.
Right.
But it's not a crime scene. You can't do that. If you have a warrant to search the property, then search it. You don't have no warrant out here.
It has been a long time since I made any public statement after I served as Premier of Bermuda. However, I now feel compelled to speak out because of what I see as a terrible injustice being committed in Bermuda.
For over 10 years, former Premier of Bermuda, Dr. the Honorable Ewart Brown, has been entangled with the Bermuda Police Service and the Department of Public Prosecution in a case which has seen unnecessary raids and unjust accusations with an outrageous disregard for constitutional order. In February 2016, police not only illegally confiscated items from the home of Dr. Reddy, an established and well-respected medical practitioner working with Dr. Brown, but in February 2017, in a blatant violation of confidentiality, the Bermuda Police Service confiscated hundreds of patient files in an unprecedented raid on Dr. Brown's medical offices. More than $10 million of taxpayers' money has been spent in a witch hunt of 76-year-old Dr. the Honorable Ewart Brown. Prosecution or persecution? Let the truth be told.
The legislation that is being used to persecute me, it's never been used as far as we can tell. And the things that they've accused me of are just ridiculous. And now that their centerpiece allegation has evaporated, they really don't have much to stand on. But why, you say, why would they persist with this? There, I think it becomes personal. And that's one of the things that you have to face when you decide to be a resistor. You know, that there are people who are going to make life uncomfortable for you. But while they're making it uncomfortable, I am going to talk about them.
In 2011, when David Bolden, a convicted liar, said under oath that I tried to bribe him, the then governor, Richard Gosney, instigated an investigation. And he said he promised the people of Bermuda that when that investigation was completed, that the findings would be revealed to the Bermuda public. He said that the investigation might go beyond Bermuda, and I know for a fact that it has gone beyond Bermuda. But all of a sudden, we now find the focus is Bermuda healthcare services. It was bribery and political corruption. Having found nothing there, then the effort is now aimed at the source of my income, which is Bermuda healthcare.
You can cover the cameras? I was just asking that you can cover the cameras? How come they can't come in and you guys get the patient records? I was just asking. I'm not being a nuisance. I'm just asking.
Police improperly and illegally raided the home of his doctor, Dr. Reddy, and seized items from his home in a quite inappropriate way. That case was fought and won. The police were forced to make recompense. Following that, and with that knowledge, they decide to carry out a raid of his business premises, seizing patient records, without any inquiry at all of any patient about the ability to be able to do that.
What I saw was disgraceful. The police presented a warrant, which we believe was obtained fraudulently. Our lawyer had instructed that the manager there, that he was not to allow anyone in the office until he, the lawyer, could read the search warrant. And apparently the police couldn't wait. We have pictures of the police trying to block the internal cameras, and we don't know why. I mean, they were upstanding police officers. I don't know why they needed to block the pictures. In fact, they came in and went into the file cabinets, took out the records, and left. My concern, first of all, was that, wow, this is a blatant violation of patient confidentiality. How can police officers grab the file of Joe Smith, who may have a personal medical ailment and doesn't want anyone to know about it except his doctor? How can the police be authorized by a judge to come in and just grab files? Well, they did it under the guise that Dr. Reddy and I were practicing medical fraud by scanning patients unnecessarily, which was insulting to Dr. Reddy because he doesn't get into the political aspect of it. But for me, I'm used to them saying things, because with me, I think the issue for them is I am a criminal. They just can't find the crime.
I have a statement here to read, and I understand there will be questions after the conclusion of the statement. This is a petition to the Governor of Bermuda, to Her Excellency Rena Leglee, Governor and Commander-in-Chief of Bermuda. We, the undersigned, oppose the Bermuda government's continued funding of the Bermuda Police Service, prosecution of former Premier of Bermuda, Dr. the Honorable Ewart F. Brown, JP. Dr. Brown was Premier of Bermuda from 2006 to 2010. The prosecution of Dr. Brown began on June 8, 2011, and continues to this day of January 2022. The prosecution of Dr. Brown has cost the taxpayers of Bermuda more than $10 million. 10 years, $10 million. No resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No retainer has been paid to coolies. Fees are being paid on a time basis based on the hours spent by the lawyers engaged in the matter. I cannot give total costs. The exact amounts being paid would give an indication of the scale and scope of the work being done, which is privileged information and sub judice at the moment. It would be prejudicial to the ongoing litigation to release these numbers.
Mr. Speaker, I rise directly to a question and a point of privilege, which the privileges of this House are to receive answers to questions. It is the responsibility of Parliament to approve finances and to understand how money is spent. A question was asked for information which directly lies within the remit of the Attorney General, and it is my submission, Mr. Speaker, that he should be directed to answer the question and not hide behind privilege.
In his capacity as Attorney General, Travamanis appears to have provided instructions to overseas counsel to the exclusion of other counsel in the Attorney General's chambers, including the Solicitor General.
What he chose to do was to launch a civil suit in the United States where he could plaster people's private information, of which he obtained illegally, Mr. Speaker, so he could try people in the court of public opinion. It is the very essence, Mr. Speaker, of abuse of power. And the former cabinet just let him do whatever he wanted to do, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. If I remember clearly, I'm sure you said to everyone who was speaking that they should be saying something that they could prove and state, and I don't believe that member can say that.
Mr. Speaker, allow me to state for the record the request from the former Attorney General to the Information Technology Office asking for the information, Mr. Speaker. And what the former Attorney General said is, pursuant to Section 26 of the Proceeds of Crime Amendment Act, I am to exercise the powers and perform the functions of the enforcement authority for the purposes of civil recovery proceedings issued under Section 3A of the Proceeds of Crime Act. For your information, the provision is as follows, and he goes to refer to a transitional clause, which isn't even in the Act, Mr. Speaker. He then goes to compel public officers to hand over terabytes of data without a court order, Mr. Speaker.
When was I first identified as a problem, as an issue? I would imagine that for those who followed it, it would have been when I came home from the U.S., even after I had been denied a medical license, when I indicated an interest in being a candidate for the Progressive Labor Party in 1993. I remember clearly when the Royal Gazette ran a story about the various candidates and their electability. And so I was interested in seeing what they were going to say about me. And I ran down the list, and everybody else was, probable, he needs this, she needs that. But when it got to me, there was only one word, unelectable. So I wondered why we were so far apart, because I thought that I was electable. After I was established as a member of Parliament, and working with and under people like Freddie Wade and Dame Lois Brown Evans, I got to know more about the local political scene because I had been away for a while. I hadn't followed the specifics, the details, but it was the same story. Racism doesn't understand geography, so it really doesn't matter where you are in the known universe. If you are alive and in this world and you are not white, you do suffer the consequences of white supremacy. There's no question about that. There are people who didn't like that analysis. Even within the party, there were people who knew that we had a collective pain, if you will, as a people, but didn't quite want to turn it upside down.
Many people consider you to be divisive. And just as late as today, in looking at the blogs, they have described you as being divisive. Are you expecting this document now or this action today that will add to your description that people have of you as being divisive? Is this another divisive tactic?
Absolutely not. I actually don't understand that. I was born in May of 1946. I was born into a divided Bermuda, and therefore I cannot accept responsibility for dividing Bermuda.
Quite honestly, I cannot claim that any of what has happened to me has been a surprise. I'd be lying if I told you that. I have been inaccurate about how long certain things would take or what have you, but for the most part, it was predictable because I chose a path of resistance. And, you know, once you choose that path and you're committed to it, then you can expect a certain level of discomfort.
Part of the investigation conducted by the police was to look into his business affairs as a doctor and running the business that he has at Bermuda Healthcare Services. And his position has been that there is nothing that I do or this business does that we have to hide. And he never has.
Now, Dr. Brown has been denied justice. This has taken over 10 years. 10 years, more than $10 million that have been taxpayers' funds that have been spent and no resolution. Who does that?
I mean, after all, our Constitution requires that a trial should take place within a reasonable time.
It's very different because I had never been in a place where the courts, the police, the prosecutors, everybody is appointed by one person who is not elected by the people. And that was very different for me, and it is very different for me.
It is not the governor's job to be swayed by public opinion, the media, or cocktail party gossip. His touchstone must be facts. His yardstick must be evidence. Forged, canceled checks were placed in government files to make it appear that Minister Derek Burgess and I had received kickbacks from a government contract. Those checks were palpable forgeries. The original payees' names had been whited out and our names put in their places. The purpose was clear: to create a huge corruption scandal and bring down the elected government of the day. What did our governor, the representative of our head of state, do? He called it a shocking incident, and like Pontius Pilate, he washed his hands of it.
A governor can always bring it to an end if he really wanted to. The problem here is this, and it's right, isn't it? He shouldn't interfere in any way at all. The position should be that we have, under our Constitution, a completely independent Department of Public Prosecutions, run by a completely independent Director of Public Prosecutions, who should not be bowing to any pressure from any source, be it Governor, be it Foreign and Commonwealth Office, be it Commissioner of Police, or anyone else. They should make an independent decision about whether to prosecute or not.
A senior investigator from the Bermuda Police Service revealed that the investigation and prosecution of Dr. the Honorable Ewart Brown was not undertaken by the Department of Public Prosecution alone, which was not only unconstitutional but unprecedented for Bermuda. In a historic move, a team called the Joint Investigation and Prosecution Team, JIPT, was formed and met monthly to oversee the investigation of Dr. Brown, comprised of the Department of Public Prosecution, the Deputy Governor, the Commissioner of Police, and a UK Overseas Territory Law Enforcement Advisor. Within the Bermuda Constitution, the Deputy Governor's role is clearly defined and does not include the prosecution of any Bermudian citizen. Section 71A. Number 4 of the Bermuda Constitution affirms that the powers conferred upon the DPP shall be vested to him to the exclusion of any other person. In the exercise of the powers conferred on him by this section, the DPP shall not be subject to the direction or control of any other person or authority. The very existence of JIPT and the involvement of the Deputy Governor was unconstitutional.
In this case, no such decision was made by the previous incumbent, Larry Mussenden. He then becomes a puny judge sitting in the Supreme Court in this jurisdiction. His role is taken over by Cindy Clark, now our Director of Public Prosecutions, and within days of doing so, decides to prosecute Dr. Brown. Now, how it's possible for her to have got a grip of that file which must be this big, within such a short space of time, defies my ability to be able to assimilate difficult legal questions, but maybe she's a lot cleverer than me.
So on the day that we received the charges, it was a bittersweet day because, when they searched high and low, they spent $10 million looking through what we hear is every account, every relationship, everything they could possibly look through, and they came up with these 13 charges. All of those charges relate to something with regard to the PLP or with regard to the Leahy Hospital or Leahy Clinic and the Bermuda Health Foundation. That's one of them. But not one of those charges, not one, having had his worst enemies look and spend all this money and look all these years, not one was about something that he took. How do you spend over $10 million chasing a 76-year-old black man when so many young black men in Bermuda are endangered? When so many young black men, when so many young black people, when so many old people, white, black, or whatever, need housing and need health care and need hospital rooms, they need food, they need shelter. How do you do that? How do you justify continuing to chase my husband? That is a persecution. And so that affects both of us deeply.
People fool you with stories of what and how much I'm stealing. And while you're looking at me, they make off with everything.
I made a comment once that I had scores to settle, and of course the Royal Gazette never let me forget that. And they asked me what I meant, and I told them that the score that I wanted to settle was that the UBP had won 6 straight elections, and the score was 6-0, and I wanted the score to be evened. And that was as clear as I could make it.
When he was accused of having cedar beams in our house. And this may sound quite ignorant to you, but I read the paper. He came home that day. I was at home, and I said, "Honey, what is a cedar beam?" And he said, "What do you mean, what's a cedar beam?" I said, "Well, they're saying you got cedar beams in the house." And I'm serious. I wanted to know what a cedar beam was. I mean, I thought I knew what it was. And my question to him was, well, why couldn't you just buy one? Why are people accusing us of stealing cedar beams? And I have to tell you, that's what friends of mine in the U.S. said when they heard this story. They're like, what's the big deal? Why couldn't you buy whatever that was? But I think that was part of the demonization, that my husband had to always steal something. That he was always accused of something tricky or whatever, when it was so untrue, so very untrue, and also so very unnecessary.
He takes the view, not perhaps wholly unreasonably, that there's been a campaign to get him by those who perhaps want to get him, and those who might want to get him might be in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in the United Kingdom. And he thinks that may be linked to the fact that he decided it was an immigration matter to allow a few Uyghurs to come here.
The Uyghurs and I have a shared experience. Injustice can exist in all cultures. And every time I look at this hat, it reminds me of the saga that began when we admitted the Uyghurs into Bermuda. The UK definitely was not happy. The US thanked me, so I had conflicting reactions to it.
That's what he thinks may be and may lie behind the attempt to persecute him over such a period of time.
But I always remember that those gentlemen had gone through a lot, and so what I went through as a result of this it pales in comparison. That was a political issue, where the British government, through the governor, felt that I had overstepped, and that we as a government did not have the authority to bring these 4 gentlemen into Bermuda. Our lawyers said otherwise. Our lawyers said that immigration is a matter for the government. It was an immigration matter, and we brought them in. I think that the British would have done the same thing. The issue wasn't the Uyghurs. The issue was me, that I was getting out of hand and required some fixing. And I think much of what we've seen since then has been the fixing, that there's a punishment, a spanking, if you will, for not seeking their permission.
He's 76 years old, 76 years old. And he has to deal with not a prosecution, but a persecution.
It must be extremely tough in the twilight of his life, when he should be enjoying the fruits of his labor over the years that he has worked, both for this country and for himself in business, and many patients that he has looked after, thousands of patients that he's looked after in this country. To be facing this for such a long period of time, and to have to bear the burden of that for such a long period of time, it would destroy lesser men, no question.
There is no reward for giving in because they're coming for you. Justice should not be delayed. Some people say justice delayed is justice denied. 10 years is a long time to investigate and then finally lay charges. It's a long time. So we believe that our constitutional rights have been violated.
Justice delayed. The fact that it's been delayed means that justice has already been denied. Do you get that? Do you understand that? It's been delayed 10 years, and they are unable to find it. They've had the FBI, they've had Scotland Yard, they've had all the other police forces, Bermuda and other forces in to investigate and have found nothing. It's taken 10 years. Now, look at that reality. And then a prosecution man, imagine this. This has been over Dr. Brown's head 10 years or more. This has lingered and lingered. Can you imagine? How would you feel? Can you imagine a person waking up every day? I have this over my head. 10 years since 2011?
You know, we were blessed because we did have good incomes based upon our work. But if you cannot have a decent income as a doctor, as a lawyer, as an investment banker, then why? What's it all about? You know, I think that more children should be taught and should be shown that if you work hard, if you get an education, you can have what Dr. Brown has in Bermuda. That's the way to get it. That's a beautiful way to get it. That's what our forefathers wanted.
It's not that I knew exactly what was going to happen, but I knew that, you know, if I see Michael Jordan walk down the street with a basketball, I am not surprised, and I can't profess to be surprised. You know, now if he comes down the street with a hockey puck, I want to know what's going on. But I understand that, you know, apple trees grow apples, you know, and racist institutions practice racism. And when they come after me, it's like coming after anybody else. That's what they do. What I have to do is to decide how much of an impact it's going to have on my behavior, and will I be able to protect myself, my family. You know, if I can do that, then I can endure. And that's what I do, you know, and I think that's a family trait, you know, where we tend to be a little stoic at times and show that you can endure, and but not passively.
He has been unjustly attacked, so he has to fight back. That's just who he is.
They're determined that they're going to break me financially. I often think, considering how much it has cost us, I often think of what happens to poor people, black men in particular, who are in trouble, so to speak, with the legal system, and they don't have any money. They don't have any resources. And what that means is usually they are just decapitated by that system, but we're fighting the good fight. I tell my children and my grandchildren that you may one day have to fight Goliath. And the odds are that Goliath will beat you. But please, for me, leave a scar on Goliath's face so that when his grandchildren say, "Papi, how did you get that mark on your face?" If he tells the truth, he will reveal that you fought your best fight.
Truth be told, Dr. the Honorable Ewart Brown left elected office in October 2010. It is now October 2022. As 2022 comes to an end, the Brown family still awaits justice. No one except Dr. Brown in the recent history of Bermuda has been criminally charged with corruption for raising funds for their political parties. The Bermuda Police Service unlawfully arrested Dr. Reddy at his home in an effort to turn him against Dr. Brown. The arrest was deemed illegal. The Bermuda Police Service raided the clinics, traumatizing patients by removing and copying over 200 of their confidential medical files. They have since dropped the medical fraud investigation against Dr. Brown, all at great cost to the Bermudian taxpayers. The police claim they have incinerated the copies of the files, but no one knows what the police did. No one in the history of Bermuda has been investigated and prosecuted by a team of people, including a foreign representative from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the Deputy Governor, the Commissioner of Police, and the DPP, or this JIPT they called themselves. Over 10 long years and over $10 million. Prosecution or persecution. The truth has now